He created one of the greatest albums of all time, while battling voices in his head. He changed music forever, but barely lived to see the credit. And now that Brian Wilson is gone, people are finally asking, how did one man do so much while going through so much? Brian Wilson didn't just make music, he shaped it. From sunny surf songs to deep emotional masterpieces, his story isn't just about a man who could write hits, it's about a man who turned pain into beauty. Now that he's passed, we're looking back at his best moments, the highs that defined him, the brilliance that stunned the world, and the legacy that no illness, no label, and no person could ever take away. Here's what's weird about Brian Wilson. Even people who loved his music didn't always know him. Sure, you've probably heard Good Vibrations or Wouldn't It Be Nice? Maybe you even know he was part of the Beach Boys. But ask the average person about Brian Wilson's story, what he went through, what he achieved, and how he did it all while fighting his own mind. And most people draw a blank. That's the problem. Brian Wilson wasn't just a music legend. He was a walking miracle, a man who redefined pop, battled mental illness, and somehow kept going. He gave the world pet sounds, inspired the Beatles, and still got overlooked for decades. And now, with his passing, it's more important than ever to remember the moments that made him great. Not just the tragedy, but the genius. So today, we're going deep into the unforgettable highs, the behind-the-scenes breakthroughs, and the times Brian Wilson proved he was more than just a beach boy. Moment number 1. Writing Surfer Girl at age 19. Before the Grammy wins, before the global fame, before everything, Brian Wilson was a shy, sensitive teenager living in Hawthorne, California. He loved harmonies, he was obsessed with the Four Freshmen. And at just 19, he wrote a little song in his head while driving his car. That song, Surfer Girl. It became the Beach Boys' first ballad. And more importantly, it was the first song where Brian wrote everything: the lyrics, the melody, the arrangement. He once said it was the first song where he felt like a real songwriter. That moment, in the car, alone with his thoughts, was the beginning of something huge. And from there, it exploded. Moment number 2. Producing Pet Sounds practically alone. In 1966, the Beach Boys were riding high, hits on the charts, screaming fans. But Brian had something else in mind. He didn't want to keep making surf music. While the rest of the band went on tour, Brian stayed in LA. And what he made, almost entirely on his own, would become one of the most respected albums ever: Pet Sounds. He brought in studio musicians known as the Wrecking Crew. He layered instruments that no one had used in pop music before: flutes, bicycle bells, even dog barks. He wrote songs about growing up, losing love, and feeling alone. And he did it all while struggling with anxiety, depression, and a brain that just wouldn't give him peace. When Pet Sounds first came out, it confused people. But guess who it didn't confuse? Paul McCartney. He called it his favorite album of all time. It inspired him to push the Beatles to make Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. One genius feeding another. Not bad for a guy who barely left his house. Moment number 3. Good Vibrations, a 6-month masterpiece. Pop singles usually took a day or two to record in the 60s. But Brian Wilson wasn't interested in normal. He had an idea for a song that felt like a spiritual experience. And he worked on it for 6 months straight. The song, Good Vibrations. He recorded parts in 4 different studios. He spliced takes together by hand. He used a rare electronic instrument called the theremin to give it that ghostly sound. And when it was done, it was unlike anything anyone had ever heard. It became a #1 hit. But more than that, it became a statement. Brian Wilson wasn't just writing pop music. He was building symphonies for the soul. Moment number 4. Standing up to his dad. Behind the scenes, Brian's life wasn't easy. His father, Murray Wilson, was their manager early on. And he was tough. Some say abusive. He constantly criticized Brian's work. He pushed him hard. At one point, he even sold the rights to the Beach Boys' early songs without telling them. But In one of the boldest moves of Brian's early career, he fired his own father as manager. That took guts, especially in the 1960s, especially when Murray had that much control. It was one of the first moments where Brian said, "I'm doing this my way." Moment number 5, surviving the breakdown. By the late 60s, the pressure was unbearable. Drugs, stress, expectations, it all caught up with Brian. He started hearing voices. He barely left his bed. For years, he became a ghost, physically alive, but emotionally gone. People thought he was finished, but he wasn't. In the late 80s, Brian made a comeback. He released a solo album. He started talking openly about his struggles. He told the world about his mental illness, his therapists, his battles. That honesty, in an era where no one talked about that stuff, was huge. And guess what? The music was good, really good. Moment number 6, the comeback tour. Imagine this. You haven't toured in decades. You've battled schizophrenia, depression, panic attacks. And now, in your 60s, you're standing on stage in front of thousands of people, singing the songs that made you a legend. That's what Brian Wilson did. And night after night, fans stood and clapped, not just because he sang the notes, but because he showed up. For Brian, just being there was a victory. And he won, again and again. Moment number 7, finishing Smile. After 37 years, in 1967, Brian started working on a follow-up to Pet Sounds called Smile. He called it A Teenage Symphony to God. It was supposed to be his masterpiece, but the project collapsed. The band didn't get it. His mental health tanked. The tapes sat in storage for decades. Then, in 2004, 37 years later, he finished it. With new musicians and old memories, Brian re-recorded the album and released Brian Wilson Presents Smile. And this time, the world understood it. It was praised as a masterpiece, not just because of the music, but because Brian had finally beaten the thing that almost beat him. Moment number 8, the Love and Mercy movie. In 2014, a film called Love and Mercy told Brian's story, the genius, the pain, the manipulation, the hope. It showed him as both a young star and an older man, played by Paul Dano and John Cusack. Brian said it was hard to watch. It brought back memories, but he was proud of it. And so were fans. Because for once, Hollywood got it right. They showed his humanity, his struggle, his soul. Moment number 9, his marriage to Melinda. Behind every great comeback, there's usually someone quietly holding it all together. For Brian, that was Melinda Ledbetter. They met in the 80s. She saw something in him when a lot of people saw a lost cause. She supported him, protected him, and helped him escape a toxic situation with an abusive therapist. They married in 1995. Moment number 10, his music living on. And finally, the moment that matters most. Brian Wilson is gone. But his music, it's everywhere. At weddings, on movie soundtracks, on playlists people make when they're falling in love or feeling lost or trying to hold on to summer just a little bit longer. From God Only Knows to Don't Worry Baby, his songs became part of people's lives. That's a legacy. That's something no illness, no critics, no time can ever erase. Brian Wilson didn't have a perfect life. He had pain, confusion, and years lost to things most of us will never understand. But through all of it, he created beauty. He made art from chaos. He stayed soft in a hard world. And when people said he couldn't do it anymore, he came back again and again. Brian's best moments weren't just in the studio. They were in every moment he kept going, when it would have been easier to give up. Brian Wilson wasn't just the man behind the Beach Boys. He was a creative force who changed what music could feel like. He was a reminder that genius and pain often live side by side, and that sometimes the most fragile people make the strongest art. His life had highs and lows, but in the end, the highs were unforgettable. And if you ever doubt how powerful music can be, just play Pet Sounds. You'll get it. Don't forget to click the like and subscribe button so you won't miss the most updated celebrity news from this channel.